new psychological study from the National Institute of Mental Health.
Just this morning, along with his longtime psychiatrist.
The circle of depression is growing wider, broader.
15% of women suffer from this disorder.
Affecting over 20 million Americans.
Changes that have occurred in the
Abnormalities in the neurotransmitters.
You've got a problem, they've got a drug.
6 million American kids take prescribed medication.
Need psychiatric care.
But what if the criminal is mentally ill?
The punishment, a form of aversion therapy.
10 minute cures on the show, but I want to
Seasonal affective disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder.
Schools criticized for over-prescription.
あらゆるところでそれを目にします。精神医学はあなたと無関係ですか？もう一度考えてください。精神医学はあなたの人生のあらゆる分野に入り込んでいます。
They basically believe that everyone is mentally ill.
You smoke too much, it's a disease. You're too unhappy, it's a disease. You're too thin, it's a disease. You're too fat, it's a disease.
Where are these coming from? These are coming from the minds of psychiatrists that are dreaming these things up, writing papers and getting published with their names on it, creating these new diseases.
First he said that I had ADD. Then he said that I was depressed. Then he said I might be bipolar, but I don't have ADD anymore.
And he said, you know, I've been noticing you, and I wonder if you have it too.
What they decided is that both my husband and my son had a chemical imbalance that needed to be corrected with a chemical balancer.
There is not one shred of credible evidence that any respectable scientist would consider valid, demonstrating that anything that psychiatrists call mental illness are brain diseases or biochemical imbalances. It's all fraud.
There's no reliability of diagnosis, and there is no science. It's just pseudoscience. It's pretend science.
This is one of the most open secrets in all of America in the psychiatric field, that nothing is being done that's legitimate, and they're billing for it.
精神科医は世界の10億人以上が精神病であると主張しています。過去30年間に精神薬を摂取している人は3倍に増え、今日では1億人以上です。そして現在彼らは2000万人の児童や生徒を興奮剤や抗精神薬で薬漬けにしています。最近インタビューに応じて精神医療の科学的根拠について問われた精神科医たちは何も答えられず、弁解するだけで精一杯でした。
Psychiatric illness is not really illness.
How do you evaluate if someone is cured or sick?
Cure is certainly something we look forward to. We had no earthly idea how to accomplish.
We're not good at causes. We don't know what causes mental illness.
しかし、それでも彼らは自らを精神医療の専門家と公言するのをやめず、患者の意思に反した治療を続けています。その結果は
This psychiatrist, man who's supposed to work to heal people, has done nothing but destroy this man's life, and in destroying his life, destroying the lives of all of his loved ones. Excuse me.
They've damaged and ruined my son, and they've trapped him in a system.
The way that they treated him and made him feel like he was worthless.
Bryant was being kept dumb and high on Ritalin so that they could make $2,500 per month.
He gave me Valium, and I got addicted to it.
It wiped out my life.
My life has been ruined. My joy has been stolen.
She was lying there. She took two gasps of air and died right there in front of me.
It is really tragic. It's awful. And it's being done for money. That's why it's being done.
Oh, it's got to be in the billions. I don't know the exact number, but it's got to be in the billions. It's just unbelievable.
This is so big that it boggles the mind.
今ご覧になったような悲劇が何百万もの人々に起こっているとしたらどうでしょう。過去40年間にアメリカの公立の精神病院で亡くなった人の数はアメリカ建国以来の全ての戦争で戦死したアメリカ兵士のほぼ2倍です。アメリカ政府と個人保険会社は精神医療に毎年720億ドルを支払っており、そのために医療保険料はかなり膨れ上がっています。そして年間300億ドル以上を超える金をかき集めながら精神医学は 回復の例を一つも示すことができないのです。信じられませんか？だとしたらまさに彼らの思うツボです。この後お見せするように、精神科医はその歴史の最初からこうして人々を騙してきたのです。
The roots of psychiatry have to do with control, power, and alienation from certain groups of people who were uncomfortable to be around. They were locked up in these places to get them out of the way. The history of psychiatry, I think, really is related to institutions.
ロンドンのベツレヘム王立病院は世界で最も古い精神病院の一つです。この病院は一般にベドラムと呼ばれますが、狂っているとみなされた人々を収容する倉庫のようなものでした。収容された人々は檻や物置、動物小屋に閉じ込められ、鎖でつながれ鞭打たれました。病院は見物料を取ってこれを一般に公開していました。18世紀、ウィリアム・バッティは自分の施設は精神病を治せると宣伝した最初の人物でした。バッティは自分の施設のおかげでイギリスでも有数の金持ちとなりました。しかし彼の治療はベトナムで実践されたのと同様に非人道的なものであり、患者は一人として治りませんでした。彼の経済的な成功により精神病院というビジネスがブームとなり、精神科医はこの新しい産業で儲けるチャンスを得たのです。
This was an era where, on both sides of the Atlantic, specialized institutions for the mentally ill are beginning to be built in large numbers. Those institutions date back certainly to the beginning of the 18th century, and in a few cases even earlier than that. But the explosive growth of an asylum sector, of asylumdom, as some historians have called it, is very much a 19th century phenomenon. It's that period when the state is persuaded to invest tax dollars in building these places.
そのような施設を経営する人々が金持ちになっていった一方、精神科医にはまだ自分の収入を最大限に増やせるだけの人々からの信頼がありませんでした。
In order to justify their profession, they needed to come up with these biological solutions, or they didn't have any profession. The only way for them to solve that was to attempt to start believing that these people that were suffering from emotional disorders was from a biological basis.
Whatever was done to make this person more manageable would be simply called a treatment. And the sad reality is that many of these so-called treatments were in essence torture.
The near-drowning devices that were developed in this period, for example, must have been appallingly frightening. For example, one device involved putting the patient into a coffin, closing the lid and dumping it into a bath of water, and then opening it up and trying to revive the patient. There were a range of these things, and the mortality rate was very, very high.
次に精神科医たちは医学用語を隠れ蓑にして自分たちの治療に信憑性を与えようとしました。このように医学用語で偽装した治療は医学的モデルとして知られるようになりました。
Somebody who's really hyper and manic, if you're wrapped up in a cold sheet and dunked into some water, you're going to quit acting manic because that's a punishing treatment. So, but as soon as the symptoms started to go away, they started to believe that somehow by wrapping them up and dunking them in cold water, it was draining the toxics out of their body. So they built the medical model around that.
アメリカ人のベンジャミン・ナッシュは精神病の生物学的理論を発展させ、狂気は頭の中の多すぎる血によって引き起こされるという考えを提唱しました。その治療とは拘束、冷水の使用、血抜き、恐怖体験など可能な限りの方法でその血を取り除くことでした。こうして新しい医学的モデルが作られたのです。
Benjamin Rush was probably the most famous American physician of the Revolutionary era. Rush was known as the master bleeder. He bled his patients for madness. He also invented something called the tranquilizer. It's a chair that looks a little bit like an electric chair. The patient was confined in this apparatus, sometimes with cold water applied to his or her head, for some hours at a time, and Rush announces in a letter that he's invented this new contraption and dubbed it the tranquilizer.
しばしば死をもたらすようなラッシュの手法は1812年に彼が表した教科書に詳しく述べられています。その教科書は以降70年にわたって精神医学の権威であり続けました。ラッシュはアメリカ精神医学の父として崇められ、1965年にその肖像がアメリカ精神医学会の印象となったほどでした。1800年代に精神医学は狂気の治療において失敗を重ね、収入源を脅かされた彼らは新しい医学的モデルを開発せざるを得なくなりました。
The cures promised when was delivered. So by the 1860s and 70s, a growing mood of pessimism was covering Europe and North America, that effectively the new institutions were ever growing in size but not growing in their effectiveness.
20世紀には新たな医学的モデルが登場しました。アメリカの精神科医ヘンリー・コットンは患者の体の一部を取り除き、これが精神病治療における突破口になると宣言しました。
The earliest target was the teeth and then the tonsils and the sinuses. But when patients didn't get better, the enthusiasts for this treatment then started to move down the body and to say, well, obviously patients have swallowed bacteria in their saliva, so stomachs need to go, spleens need to go, colons need to go.
患者に苦痛を与え、障害を負わせることへの抗議が激しさを増すたびに、彼らは新しい方法を開発し、奇跡の治療としてもてはやしました。しかし結局は効果のなさや残酷さという点で従来の治療と何ら変わりがないことが証明されただけでした。
This is a history of psychiatry, more or less, to damage the patient. I mean, this is a version of the original model, which was to chain them like animals.
If you're doing it to somebody because you insist that they have to change, and you're going to do that by turning the screws, you might say, whether it's with medication, restraint, whatever, that's torture. And a huge part of what psychiatry has done really comes down to torture.
20世紀が進むにつれ、精神医学は医学の一専門分野となることで、その正当性を模索し続けました。しかし彼らにできたことは、精神的肉体的苦痛や死をもたらすより効果的な手段を開発することだけでした。その遺産は最も利益になる医学的モデルとして現代の精神医学に受け継がれました。すなわち数百万人単位の大規模な薬漬けです。そのために精神医学は人間が最も大切にしてきた信念を打ち砕く必要がありました。つまり人間は自分たちがそうであると考えていたものではないと宣言することでした。1879年、ドイツライプチヒ大学ヴィルヘルム・ブント教授が人間の感覚に関する実験を行いました。ブントは人間の思考、個性、行動は脳の化学反応に過ぎないと公言しました。
Wundt became frustrated with his inability to change behavior because he was dealing with the original, psychology. That's the psyche, that's the soul. He created a new science, which was based on man being an animal without a soul, to be trained, not to be a thinker, but to be trained.
人間は魂のない有機体であるというブントの新定義を学ぶために生徒が世界中から集まりました。この時代の精神はドイツの哲学者フリードリッヒ・ニーチェによって要約されています。
Gott ist tot. Gott bleibt tot. Und wir haben ihn getötet.
ブントの理論に従い、ロシアのイワン・パブロフは行動を修正する方法を見出すための動物実験を行いました。
Pavlov studied with Wilhelm Wundt in Leipzig, Germany, in the late 1800s, and he experimented with dogs with electrodes and stimulus response, denying privileges to denying rewards.
And he noticed that when you brought out some food in front of animals, dogs in particular, that they would begin to salivate. So he'd ring the bell at the same time that he brought the food out, and then eventually, instead of bringing the food out, he just rang the bell, and of course the dogs got all excited. He called that a conditioned reflex.
パブロフが初めて実験した人間は子供でした。唾液を集めて測定するために子供の頬に穴を開けました。
Pavlovian conditioning became one of the major foundations of a lot of behavioral science research in the 20th century.
条件付けを繰り返すことで行動をコントロールできるという考えは行動主義として知られるようになりました。
The behaviorists believed that all children are animals and can be trained as animals. This was the view of behaviorists. As a matter of fact, John Watson, the most famous of the behaviorists, says that you have to treat human beings or look at human beings the way you would look at the ox you slaughter. See, the behavior is not interested in what's up in your head or your soul because they don't believe there is a soul.
ワトソンの後継者でハーバード大学の心理学者 B.F. スキナーはすべての行動は行動心理学者が望む通りに操ることができると考えました。
Skinner developed what's called operant conditioning, where he was able to demonstrate you can change animal behavior by certain schedules of reinforcement, by giving them rewards at certain times, and then you can teach pigeons to play ping pong, for example, and you can teach rats to run mazes, and you can teach human beings to seek certain economic or societal rewards.
Skinner could actually shape new behavior patterns, and this actually was the sort of thing he quite soon became very famous for.
その最も悪名高い実験がスキナー箱でした。
He was designing a Skinner box, which is something like a big playpen, but everything in it's controlled. The temperature's controlled, the light's controlled, and so on. And the idea is then you present children with certain stimuli that you want them to learn to react to.
スキナーはネズミのために作ったのと同様の箱に自分の娘を1年近く隔離しました。
The child was stimulated and had to respond in a certain way, like a chicken or a rat in a cage, because they firmly believe that children are animals. If you believe, though, that a child is a human being, you can't train him like a rat.
現在、国立精神衛生研究所は国民の税金から年間約4000万ドルを心理学的な行動調査のために支払っています。1948年以来この調査に用いられた資金は計190億ドルに上ります。精神科医はこうした資金を使ってパブロフ、ワトソン、スキナーらが開発した条件付けの技術を用いています。例えば少年院の子どもたちを最大電圧270ボルトのバッテリーにつなぎ嫌悪療法と呼ばれる方法でショックを与えました。
Antoine was having a number of problems because he was up at a center that was shocking him every time he did anything. There was a button on a little, almost like a TV remote, that would be used and pushed.
They will get an additional shock for trying to remove the electrode. So they're expected to sit there and let this electricity pass through their skin without trying to remove it. If they yell in anticipation of the shock, they will shock the student an additional time for yell.
The cost to send a student to Judge Rottenberg from New York is about $214,000 per student. These students are tortured. They're given this electric shock therapy for no other reason but to inflict pain.
他にも性的異常者を治療するための電気ショックがあります。脳の活動を妨害するために頭蓋骨を通して強力な磁気ショックを送り、外科的に埋め込まれた電極を通して高圧電流を流します。問題ある行動を抑制するためで費用は患者1人当たり10万ドルです。魂を否定する科学から生まれた行動修正の手法は調査と治療によって何十億ドルもの金を生み出し続けるだけでなく、何百万という人々を死に至らしめているもう一つの精神医学運動の下地となっているのです。
January 1945. As World War II comes to a close, the full horror of Hitler's final solution is exposed, with grotesque killing factories unparalleled in human history. Mass graves filled with corpses of men, women, and children, murdered by starvation, bullets, and poison gas. What could drive men to commit such atrocities against their fellow human beings?
その答えは優生学というエセ科学です。ナチスが権力を握る何十年も前に精神科医と心理学者によって作られ推進されたものです。
The eugenics movement got started in 1883 with Francis Galton, and he felt that human beings should take evolution in their own hands, and that the most talented individuals, the most healthy individuals, the most attractive individuals should have more offspring.
There was great concern that people that they considered had poor genes were reproducing faster than the people they considered had good genes.
They felt that a medical solution might be the proper one. This is what led to the sterilization movement.
It resulted in sterilization of mentally ill people, sterilization of retarded people, sterilization of people we don't like politically and sociologically. So the problem is not with genetics. The problem is a pretend phony genetics used to justify inhumane social policies.
何の証明もないただの理論であるにもかかわらず、20世紀の初めまでには優生学はイギリスからブラジル、メキシコ、スウェーデン、ロシア、アメリカなど約30カ国に広まり、強制不妊が幅広く実施されました。
Eugenics movement in Germany was somewhat different than the eugenics movement in the United States in that there were many more physicians and psychiatrists. Alfred Plutz was one of the pioneers in the German eugenics movement and how to control the population of those whom he considered inferior. In 1905, along with his brother-in-law, Ernst Ruden, he established the first organization for racial hygiene.
Alle Völker müssen eine außerordentlich große Zahl von minderwertigen Schwächlinge, Kränkliche und Krüppel mit sich schleppen. Durch eine weise Gesetzgebung in diese Richtung wird auch zugleich in rationellster Weise die erforderliche Zuchtwahl getrieben werden können.
ヒトラーは特にアメリカの優生学者マディソン・グラントに感銘を受けました。ヒトラーはグラントの著書「偉大な民族の終焉」を自分のバイブルであると称賛しました。ヒトラーはさらに彼の著書「我が闘争」の中で優生学はドイツ民族を再建する科学であると絶賛しました。
Wer körperlich und geistig nicht gesund und würdig ist, darf sein Leid nicht im Körper seines Kindes verewigen. Das Recht der persönlichen Freiheit tritt zurück gegenüber der Pflicht der Erhaltung der Rasse.
The German eugenicists welcomed the Nazi advent to power because the Nazi program could fund the very programs that they had in mind. The Nazis gave them political support, financial support, and conversely, the psychiatrists gave the Nazis a medical justification for their genocidal policies.
Something like 40% of German psychiatrists had joined the SS by 1933. They weren't forced into the SS, they just joined it naturally because the beliefs were very, very similar.
Ruden and his work led directly to the decision to move from sterilization to murder.
彼らの計画は単純でした。まず知能の遅れた不適能者は生きることの重荷から逃れたいのにそう言えないのであり、彼らを殺すことは彼らを救う行為であると大衆に信じさせることでした。次に劣った人々の定義を拡大し、エホバの証人、ユダヤ人、ロマ、同性愛者などは全て生きる価値がないとすることでした。精神科医は殺人フィルムとして知られるプロパガンダ映画を制作し、これはドイツ中の5300の映画館で上映されました。
Geisteskrankheit ist als ein Erbübel eine der größten Gefahren für die Volksgesundheit. Irrtum ist, dass sich solche Kranken glücklich fühlen und am Leben hängen. Sie haben überhaupt kein Daseinsbewusstsein. Wer von ihr befallen wird, dem ist die schwerste Last des Schicksals auferlegt. Ein Dasein ohne Leben.
It first started with passive violence, which is starvation,
It then intensified to lethal injections, and finally it developed into systematic gassing and cremation.
彼らの本部はベルリンにあり、悪名高いコードネーム T4 で呼ばれていました。
T4 program was named after Tiergarten 4, which essentially resulted over a period of time in the murder of about 70,000 people who were deemed mentally retarded, emotionally distraught, or physically handicapped by the Germans. They were called life unworthy of living.
殺人はドイツ中の精神病院内で試験的に行われ、次に強制収容所へと移行しました。死刑執行人はドイツでトップの精神科医たちでした。 T4 の責任者ポール・ニーチェはこう述べています。
Die Durchkämmung der KZs fand nach genau denselben Gesichtspunkten anhand derselben Meldebögen statt wie die der Irrenhäuser.
6 million Jews died in concentration camps and as a result of Nazi extermination policies. Rudin congratulated Hitler for making his, that is Rudin's 30-year dream come true.
ナチが降伏した後、医者と精神科医の戦争犯罪に対して国際司法裁判が開かれました。しかし精神医学の将来に致命的な打撃が与えられるのを恐れたアメリカの精神科医たちが介入し、責任を一握りのドイツの精神科医に転嫁しました。
There were some doctors who were prosecuted, but very few. Ernst Rudin returned to Switzerland at the end of the war. He did not serve any prison time.
One of the strangest things of all about the legacy of Nazi science is that some of the nastiest psychiatric eugenicists at the end of the war went back to work either in Germany or sometimes in the United States.
望ましくない人間を根絶するという精神医学の計画は文明化された世界の至るところに広がり、1100万人の殺害を招きました。多くの精神科医たちは裁きを受けることなく世界中で優生学を推進し続けました。その結果が今日の人種差別、人々の苦悩、そして終わることのない紛争なのです。
After World War II, a new eugenics was resurrected out of the bones and ashes of the old eugenics. The eugenics movement has been at the forefront to establish a new scientific racism that justifies oppression and exploitation and racism.
実際、人種差別のルーツは精神医学にあります。
The entire history of psychiatry, beginning with scientific conclusions that were made in the 1830s, was an effort to prove the intellectual inferiority of African Americans.
Benjamin Rush is the father of modern psychiatry. And he is the one that gave us the term nigritude. He said that all blacks have inherited this disease. And this particular disease, it caused them to be inferior. In addition to that, it was the reason why it was very important that blacks remain segregated and separate from whites so that whites did not inherit this disease.
ラッシュは黒人性はハンセン病の一形態であると主張し、医学的必要性から人種差別を正当化しました。それは奴隷制を継続させる根拠となりました。
The fact that you have brutalized a whole group of people had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with some genetic link and that basically you were just a diseased person, so when a slave master wanted to get rid of a recalcitrant slave, they could just say, oh, well, they're suffering from this disease.
Drapetomania, that is the name of the mental disorder that was contrived by Samuel Cartwright, who said that blacks have a mental disorder if they had a desire to run away from slavery.
Running away became such a common problem that psychiatrists attempted to give that a disease. He says, but that's a cure for that. And the question was, well, what's the cure for that? Frequent whippings, frequent whippings. You'd be surprised how that disease clears up when the lash is put in place of their excuses.
奴隷制が廃止された後も精神医学による人種差別は継続し、さらに強化されました。 アメリカ精神医学ジャーナルは、野蛮人や人食い人種の末裔である黒人は高度な文明に適応していないと公式に宣言しました。また優生学というエセ科学は人種差別的な活動をエスカレートさせました。
There is a clear and long and intimate connection between the eugenics movement and the Ku Klux Klan. Harry Laughlin, who was the Carnegie Institution's director of the Eugenics Record Office, had a close relationship to the Ku Klux Klan through the publication of a book called White America, which was written by a major Klan leader. So Laughlin wrote a glowing review of the book in the Eugenics News. And at the same time, you have the Ku Klux Klan using eugenics to justify their racist goals.
しかし、精神医学による人種差別はアメリカだけではありませんでした。ヒトラーと同じ人種差別理論を採用し、実践していた南アフリカで20世紀最悪の虐待が起こりました。偶然の一致ではありません。この国の首相は1920年代、ナチス影響下のドイツで優生学を学んでいたのです。
Dr. Henrik Verwoerd is regarded as the architect of apartheid. He saw South Africa as a divided state with whites, blacks and brown people living in totally separate areas with black people having no rights whatsoever.
アパルトヘイトが実施され、精神病院が国中の至るところに設立されました。実際にはそれらは強制労働収容所だったのです。
These places operated under a private company by the name of Smith Mitchell and Company. They were saving money through the cheap accommodation for psychiatric patients while making massive fortune out of money that Parliament had appropriated for medication. So it was a corrupt system.
この実態が明るみに出たとき、2万2000人の患者たちが殺され、一方で精神医学による収容所では$9000万もの利益を得ていたことが分かりました。世界保健機関の報告書は、精神医学が人種差別を助長したとし、それらの収容所は奴隷の所有や売買に類似していると述べています。1972年、アメリカの精神科医ルイス・ジョリー・ウエストは人種差別主義の遺産を受け継ぐ嫌悪療法の実験を密かに行いました。これは暴力センターと呼ばれました。政府資金による彼の計画とは、黒人やヒスパニック系の男性の脳に電極を埋め込み、彼らが何らかの暴力的な行動を取るたびにショックを与えるというものでした。それでうまくいかなければ薬物で科学的に虚勢するのです。ウエストの人種差別的な提案は大衆の怒りを買い、計画はすぐに中止されました。精神医学の人種差別は勢いを弱められましたが、彼らはなおもそれをやめませんでした。1994年、心理学者のリチャード・ヘンスティンはベルカーブという本を共同執筆し、黒人は遺伝的な障害者であり、白人より劣等であることを証明したと主張しました。
The bell curve really argues a very old eugenics idea. It argues that people are born with different kinds of intellectual abilities, that these are inborn pretty much at birth. It goes back to the notion that somehow black people are genetically and biologically inferior to white people as a way to justify what was really its programs of social racism and social sexism. And you see that kind of thinking going on in public school testing and IQ testing and educational testing and tracking.
And this new tool fit into that old mold. It was a new tool that could prove the intellectual inferiority of African Americans.
The psychiatric profession has done great damage, certainly in the past, and far too many in the present too, to subvert democracy and perpetuate racial stereotypes, even more, deep racism in society.
We have to battle against this continual misinformation, disinformation, pseudoscience. It can be repackaged in whatever form or format it is. But if it is based solely upon the color of one's skin and then is the merit of that human being, I just reject it.
こうして今日もなお、エセ科学による嘘に助長された憎悪の炎が燃え続けています。これが人種差別と政治的な抑圧を正当化している精神医学の遺産なのです。
быть верными коммунистическим идеалам, убежденно, с революционной настойчивостью претворять в жизнь ленинский завет, учиться коммунизму, трудиться самоотверженно, по-коммунистически, всей жизнью своей, утверждать на земле дело Ленина, дело партии. Клянемся!
ソビエトの社会体制は絶対的な忠誠を要求しました。党の方針に沿わない人々は反体制者とみなされ、国家の敵というレッテルを貼られました。一回でも秘密警察への密告があれば、彼らは特別な精神病院に連れ去られました。しかし、いわゆる反体制者と呼ばれた人々は、自らが持つ自由の概念を行動に移しました。
Я вел жизнь тайную, конспиративную. Никто не знал, что я это делаю. У меня была маленькая подпольная типография, и я стал делать листовки.
一方で他の人々は自身を忠実なソビエト人民と考えていました。
Я, например, считал, уверенно считал, что я один из лучших советских людей. Когда уже даже меня арестовали и написали особо опасный государственный призыв, я рассмеялся. Я при нем, при этом же самом нынешнем генерале, рассмеялся. А он меня вызывает психиатра на утро.
ソビエトの精神科医たちはこのような人々を信念の硬直、つまり不活発性統合失調症という新しい障害を患っていると診断しました。他国の精神科医同様、ソビエトの精神科医も患者たちを治療するのに強力な薬物を処方しました。
Они никогда их с удовольствием не принимали. И находят пути их не принимать. Мы обязаны просмотреть прием лекарственных продуктов, чтобы больные лекарства дошли до больного. Вот они где-то уже, как говорится, в горле проглатывают, все, ротовая полость чистая. И потом такие делают какие-то движения, отрыгивают.
Врач на обходе говорит: как себя чувствуете, Петр Петрович? Я говорю: послушайте, вот, там, когда 5 кубиков галоперидола, туда, например, слюна до полу, там перекошенность вся, значит, одни мышцы растягиваются, другие сокращаются, совершенно ужасные позы, лицо все ужасное, на душе страшно просто. Я человека, вот самое главное, описать это состояние невозможно.
Санитары совершенно безнаказанно могли избивать. По любому поводу. Или вообще без повода. Вот, например, санитар открывает дверь, и вдруг, если тут ты оказался, например, в проеме двери. И вот этого достаточно было, чтобы, скажем, получить удар. Если больной, скажем, оказывал сопротивление при избиении, то его могли привязать, и привязывали, и избивали, и продолжали избивать уже привязанного.
Проходит, допустим, год-два, там выписывают убийц, выписывают насильников. Михаил, ты бы лучше убил бы кого-нибудь, мне бы легче было тебя отсюда вытолкнуть. Это было, вот, рождало такое чувство безысходности.
1967年から1987年にかけて、ソビエト政府は200万人以上の人々を逮捕しました。その人たちは政治的な理由のために精神病と診断され、精神科の治療を受けるよう強要されました。今日でも精神医学は世界中の政府において選択の自由を抑圧する道具であり続けています。
What we've learned is that in Gitmo or Guantanamo Bay, that we had teams of healthcare professionals called the biscuit teams, behavioral scientists, psychologists, working with the military to advise them on how far you could push a prisoner. There are abuses that have been documented around the world. We have healthcare professionals who have committed potentially acts of treason within their medical ethics. And there's nobody supervising that. There's nobody making them stand accountable to their medical ethics.
精神科医が政治派に対して何の制約もなく肉体的精神的苦痛を与えてきました。歴史を通じ彼らはその行為の外見だけを変え治療と称して人々に売りつけてきたのです。精神科医は脳に意図的な損傷を与えるいくつかの新しい処置を1920年代から始めていました。
Manfred Sokal had this notion that he could kill just the bad brain cells, that somehow we have good brain cells, we have bad brain cells. So if you give people enough insulin, you kill those bad brain cells, and if the person survived this epilepsy, they would be better off for it.
ひどい痙攣発作と 5% にも上るインシュリンショックによる死亡率にもかかわらず、サケルは子供のようになった患者を指して治療は成功したと述べました。病院にはインシュリン病棟が建てられ、昏睡療法は巨大なビジネスになりました。さらにハンガリー人のラディスラス・フォン・メデューナはメトラゾールという薬物を用いて脳に損傷を与える発作を引き起こすことで精神病を取り除けると考えました。
He noticed his epileptics had no mental health problems, and his mental health patients, his psychiatric patients, seemed to have no epilepsy, and so he thought doing one would obviate the other.
The theory was that epilepsy and schizophrenia couldn't coexist in the same brain, and that if epilepsy was induced, that a seizure was caused, it would, quote, drive out the schizophrenia. There's no scientific basis for this whatsoever.
メトラゾールには即効性と多大な利益がありました。一人の精神科医が午前中だけで50人の患者にショックを与え、扱いやすい状態にすることができました。1939年までにメトラゾールは精神科医の間で流行し、アメリカの病院の 70% で使用され、世界中のほぼ全ての国で使われました。インシュリンとメタラゾールの経済的な成功により、脳に損傷を与える痙攣発作を引き起こすより効果的な手法の開発に火がつきました。
How is electric shock therapy done?
We use these electrodes. We place them on the patient's head like this, and then by means of this machine, we pass a controlled electric current through the brain, just for a fraction of a second. The patient doesn't feel it.
この奇跡の治療の背後にある物語はローマの屠殺場に始まります。
In Italy, in 1938, two Italian psychiatrists decided to observe that before slaughtering pigs, in order to make the pigs more docile, they would apply electrodes to their temples that were hooked up to wall current, and that this stunned the pigs, but it didn't kill them, and they could then slaughter them. Well, this gave them the encouragement to try inducing convulsions with electricity.
We would see teeth falling out, broken spines, bones knocked out of joint, broken bones, and people even getting internal organ damage from being restrained while they were having these uncontrolled writhing seizures, convulsions.
Many patients have been returned to their homes and jobs who might still be here if it were not for this helpful form of treatment.
脳の損傷を治療としてうまく売り込んだ精神科医は脳を標的にしたより正確な手法を模索するようになりました。きっかけは1848年にバーモント州で起きた事件でした。爆発が起こり、鉄道労働者フィニアス・ゲイジの頭を鉄の棒が貫きました。ゲイジは死を免れましたが、彼の性格は激変しました。70年後、ポルトガルの神経科医エガス・モニスは患者の頭蓋骨に穴を開け、脳に直接純正のアルコールを注ぎ入れて前頭葉の組織を殺すことで同様の結果を得ようとしました。モニスはこの新しい手法をロボトミーと呼びました。ウォルター・J・フリーマン博士は最も悪名高いロボトミー実践者です。彼は頭蓋骨に穴を開けることなしにより早く行える方法を発見しました。
There was no anesthesia. and he would just lift up the eye and stick nothing more than an ice pick right into the brain, right under the orbital bone, and then just rake the thing back and forth until he was satisfied that he had caused enough disruption of brain tissue, and then pull it out.
フリーマンは彼のロボトミー車で移動し、舞台の上や時にはその車の中で患者の脳を切り刻みました。
And he would pull up and offer lobotomies to people, get referrals from the local doctors, or sometimes people didn't even go through doctors. They'd go right to the lobotomobile, and he would just do the brain damaging procedure right there.
彼の手術の免許は手術台で最後の患者を死亡させた後剥奪されました。フリーマンは彼の任意で3500以上のロボトミーを実行、監督し、そのうち 25% 以上が植物人間にされました。
They lobotomized 1 million people in the 40s and the 50s and beginning of the 60s until they came to the conclusion that this was a destructive treatment.
奇跡の治療は脳を破壊する不正行為であると暴かれたにもかかわらず、精神科医は一歩先を行く医学的進歩に見せかけた新しいタイプの精神外科手術を開発しました。
I completely shuddered from head to toe, and that's what I heard in my head when he drilled something in my brain.
Northwest, actually, of the centre hole.
I'm sorry I had to do that.
Yeah, why did you have to do that?
I went, oh, funny, and
Did you?
my head all shook inside.
Oh dear.
Oh, my head shook inside.
Yes, all right.
Everything shook, the eyes, everything, the teeth.
Oh, that's well, well.
That was grievous bodily harm done to my brain. And nobody has the right anyway to play God with somebody's brain.
The whole operation took about 8.5 hours. And they kept me awake for every second of it. And I remember every second of it. And I still remember it to this day because I have this operation every day of my life. Whether I like it or not, I have it.
精神科医たちは未だに精神外科手術の効果を賛美しています。年間$5300万を稼ぎ出す治療なのですから。しかしロボトミーの評判が悪くなると、精神科医たちはすぐに電気ショックを話題の中心に戻しました。それは電気痙攣療法と改名され、現在では患者の叫び声を抑え、撃墜による苦悶を見せないようにするために麻酔を施すようになっています。
The main misconception that people have about ECT is that it's new and improved. The new and improved refers strictly to these cosmetic improvements because, in fact, they make it easier on the witnesses. The person isn't shaking all over the table. They're paralyzed now. It isn't new, it isn't improved, it is worse.
Every 10 years or so, there tends to be, first of all, a denial that it causes any harm. Secondly, an acknowledgement that it might have caused harm, but here's a whole new approach, and now this one is blameless, without any research to back it up.
The ECT machine can produce anywhere from 50 to 400 volts. It's the kind of energy that we use for industrial machinery that might be in a steel mill or a printing press, some large piece of machinery. It's an extraordinary amount of energy and it causes a great deal of damage.
囚人が不当に電気ショックを与えられた話はよく聞かれますが、精神科医が ECT のために使用する電圧の量はその33倍に上ります。そのような被害を受ける人のほとんどが最も弱い立場の人たちです。電気ショックを受ける人の3分の2は月経前症候群、更年期障害、産後うつ病と診断された女性たちです。電気ショックを受ける患者の半分は高齢者です。政府から無料保険医療サービスが受けられるようになる65歳のアメリカ人高齢者は64歳の人の 3.6 倍も ECT を受けています。ではこれらは要するに何でしょう。10万人の死者、脳にひどい損傷を受けた無数の人々、彼らが普通の生活に戻れる希望は全くありません。総額$12の電気代で精神科医たちはアメリカだけで$50億をかき集めています。しかし次の奇跡の治療において精神科医たちはこれまで以上に金を稼げる武器を加えました。それはより早く、より安上がりに、 あらゆる男女や子供を一生患者に変えられるのです。1950年代初めに次なる奇跡の治療が開発されました。本来豚の寄生虫駆除のために作られたある化学物質に目にアイスピックを突っ込むのと同じような仕組みで脳の機能を妨害する作用があることが発見されたのです。それは旧式の治療が新たに粉飾されたものでした。
With the advent of these new tranquilizing drugs, it seems not too much to say that we're on the verge of an entirely new era in the treatment of mental illness.
カナダの精神科医ハインツ・リーマンはストラジンを科学的ロボトミーと名付け、ただ飲むだけで簡単に精神外科手術と同じ効果が得られる薬だと説明しました。
Thorazine provided psychiatry with the entry into mainstream medicine. It had its magic bullet. If I'm a psychiatrist and I have to spend an hour talking to someone in psychotherapy, there's only so much I can charge for that hour. But if I can come in, give you a pill, and send you back out in 15 minutes or 10 minutes, that's a much more efficient use of my time monetarily.
精神科医たちが言わなかったのは、ストラジンが遅発性ディスキネジアという神経学的な機能障害を誘発するということでした。
And that's a neurological syndrome where you have muscle twitches, abnormal jerks, which are uncontrolled, and they either last for a long time or sometimes they're permanent. So that's very clear, very well recognized long-term or permanent brain damage from these medications.
Mr. Blount has virtually no signs of his original illness now. The signs that the movements of his mouth are completely side effects of the drugs that he was on for 20 years. Mr. Blount is quite rational. He understands what's going on. And if you're patient, he can carry on a very rational conversation with you.
Even when you remove the drug, it may still remain. It means you have caused a permanent disabling of the brain. In the late 50s, you get the first signs of it, people starting to worry about it. But it's not until the late 70s that psychiatrists start warning their patients about it. 20 years.
ストラジンの製造会社、スミス・クライン・フレンチは、この悪い評判を払拭し続けるだけの理由を持っていました。最初の年だけで彼らの投資した額の5倍もの見返りがあったからです。障害をもたらす深刻な副作用を大衆や報道機関から隠す一方で、著名な医者や精神科医たちが将来にわたる精神薬の拡張に向けた土台を築くべくプエルトリコで会合を開きました。精神科医ネイサン・クライン博士はその会議の最終報告の中でこう述べています。
The present breadth of drug use may be almost trivial when we compare it to the possible number of chemical substances that will be available for the control of selective aspects of man's life in the year 2000.
クライン博士は何億ドルもかけた大規模な宣伝機構の後押しを受けて、世界中の市場に新しい精神医療の特効薬をあふれさせる活動の先頭に立ちました。こうして精神医療は薬物販売人の産業となったのです。1970年にはアメリカ精神医学会は製薬会社の資金に完全に依存するようになっており、年間予算の 30% が学会誌への製薬会社からの広告費で賄われていました。
So we had money flowing to trade organizations, we had money flowing to the doctors, and to their journals. Well, we all know that that is going to influence how they think.
The majority of National Institute of Mental Health and National Institute of Health scientists are getting more money from drug companies on the side than their tax-based salary.
それだけの大金を作り出すためには、それを正当化する科学的な理論が必要でした。彼らの結論とは、いわゆる脳内化学物質の不均衡があらゆる精神的な問題の原因であり、それは薬物で修正できると公式に発表したのです。
This chemical imbalance is one of the greatest fallacies ever foisted upon patients and the public. There is no chemical test to show an imbalance related to any psychiatric disease, whether it's depression, anxiety, what have you.
The chemical imbalance is for the benefit of the psychiatrist. It has to be there so that psychiatrists can treat it.
しかし、この詐欺的な理論でも 正座不能といったよくある恐ろしい副作用に関する増え続ける証拠を隠すことはできませんでした。
Akathisia is like an extreme inner nervous agitation. People describe it as wanting to crawl out of their own skins. And this happens with great frequency, and it is absolutely, totally well understood to be associated with suicide and violence and homicide.
こうした副作用、暴力、自傷行為、死亡事故が相次いで報告された後、1991年に保健の専門家や議員、一般市民がアメリカ食品医薬品局に調査を要求しました。
I know with absolute certainty that if Charles had any idea of the side effects of Prozac, he would never have taken it.
I had two sons, David Lee, age 8, Billy 16, a wife 20 years, all gone. I'll tell you why. After being on Prozac for 21 days, my wife shot and killed both of these two boys right here. She turned the gun to herself and shot herself twice.
I took the 9mm automatic, sat down on the bed and put the gun to my head, and I blew a 4-inch hole out the back of my arm instead of my head. Thank God I was a lousy shot. Had someone looked further into Prozac, steps could have been taken to avoid it.
中立であるべき聴聞会は、委員の大半が製薬会社と金銭的なつながりがある精神科医でした。
They basically couldn't find an expert, a doctor, a psychiatrist, at a leading medical school who basically in some way or another didn't have a consulting agreement, hadn't taken money from the pharmaceutical companies.
I do not find from the evidence today that there is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and or the intensification of suicidality and or other violent behaviors.
500 deaths, 33 murder cases, and over 20,000 adverse side effects. Would you like to tell me why this drug is still on the market?
Is there an alliance, an unholy alliance between the psychiatric community, the pharmaceutical industry, and the FDA? And the answer is yes.
この癒着関係は1997年に明るみに出ました。製薬会社数社がアメリカ食品医薬品局を説きつけ、直接一般市民に宣伝できるようにしたのです。精神科医たちの医学的な推薦を得て、たった3年間で精神薬の売り上げは急上昇し、ほぼ 2.5 倍になりました。暴力や自殺の被害者の数は天井知らずに増え、市民の怒りの声についにアメリカ食品医薬品局は抗うつ剤に警告ラベルを貼る指示を発行しました。しかしすでに13年が経過しており、その間何十億ドルも儲けた精神科医は次なる魔法の薬を市場に出そうとしています。世界人口の1億人以上が精神薬を服用しており、その薬物はまやかしの科学に支えられ、買収された規制当局によって推薦されています。こうした有害な薬物の売り上げは年間約800億ドルに上ります。精神科医たちが地球上のあらゆる人に病名をつけ、投薬する方法を模索する一方で、彼らは私たちの最も個人的な自由をも侵害し続けているのです。精神科医は精神障害者にとって何が最善であるかを決定する絶対的な権利を要求します。精神障害者は正気でないので治療を正しく評価できないとしているのです。権限を強制し、利益を得るのに十分な数の患者を施設に収容できるように、精神科医は強制入院という手法を用います。
When you go to a real doctor, say a family doctor or a cardiologist, a patient always has the right to refuse treatment. So there is no such thing as involuntary treatment when it comes to clinical medicine as practiced by real doctors. Psychiatrists, of course, believe that people can be treated against their will.
1956年、精神科医のウィンフレッド・オーバーホルサーは、従来とは全く別次元で強制入院を行うことを意図した計画を議会に提出しました。その計画は、アラスカに40万ヘクタールの原野を購入して、巨大な精神病院を建設し、入院手続きの法律を変え、精神科医がうなずくだけで誰でもそこに送り込めるようにするというものでした。法案は下院をすんなりと通りました。 しかしその計画を知った市民は激怒し、それをシベリア USA と呼びました。法案は上院で即座に廃案となりました。シベリア法案の廃案によって彼らの大規模な計画は食い止められましたが、強制入院は依然として精神医療施設を満たす最も効果的で利益になる方法でした。
Again, the person has committed no crime and has no trial and is sent directly to a mental hospital, which is really a prison.
How many people go to an insane asylum and say, please lock me up? Doctors don't lock up anybody. Psychiatrists lock you up.
子供さえ両親から連れ去られ、法的に救いを求める手段はほとんどありません。
They just invaded our home. They came in with officers. Our kids were scared. You know, they come in with pieces of paper and say, "You're giving us your kids." And it's like, you know, how can they just come in and do that?
She said, you could be arrested for medical neglect. And I said, but how was that when, you know, this is my child? And I see that he doesn't need that much medication. Why would you threaten me with something like that?
At 10 p.m., 2 policemen and 2 social workers came to my house and took all 4 of my kids away.
精神病院に収容された患者は薬漬けにされ拘束されます。
The more a person objects, the more this objection is construed as symptom of a mental illness.
At which point the person would be locked up in restraints. There would be the ankle, the knee, the waist, the head, the wrist, and the shoulder restraints. And if when that process was happening, if there was almost any resistance at all, the person then would be medicated to a point where they would almost be knocked out.
We had one case where they actually took a patient in a seclusion room and beat him up. And then they lied about it to the services that investigated. So it's a pretty wide range of abuse issues that we've encountered.
病院の職員の中には患者を怒らせ暴れさせる者もいます。そうすれば患者を拘束でき、1人当たり保険会社に1日$1000も請求できるのです。
The patient would resist diagnosis, resist treatment, and also want to leave treatment while they were at the hospital. And invariably, every time, that person's situation would be exacerbated until they were put in constraints and medicated, at which point there would be documented reasons to keep that person in treatment.
その負担は医療保険料の急増という形で直接民衆にのしかかっています。犠牲者はひどいショックを受け、死に至ることさえあります。
16-year-old Rochelle Claiborne died in Laurel Ridge's care last August. The state report shows during the restraint, quote, Rochelle stated several times she could not breathe.
In almost all respects, the staff behaved appropriately, followed the standards.
法律の甘さや曖昧さにつけ込み、多くの精神科医と職員は強姦や暴行、殺人に対する刑事責任を問われることはほとんどありません。
He begged me to take him home, take him out of there, that they were treating him wrongly, and he didn't want to stay there. And I got a call that there had been an accident, that they held him down until he couldn't breathe anymore. I wish I would have listened to him, take him out of there before it had happened. And then I miss him every day. And I wish I could have him back, but I can't.
この事件に関しては誰も刑事責任を問われていません。お年寄りは多くの精神科医による虐待の第一の標的です。アメリカの精神病院での高齢者の治療には$270億以上の公共および民間の保険金が費やされています。
Unwarranted commitment has occurred that wouldn't have occurred if the people hadn't had insurance. The proof of that pudding is generally in how fast they get out once the insurance runs out.
Involuntary commitment is a form of psychiatric slavery, where persons are treated as if they're property and they are deprived of liberty, and people are making money in the process.
As long as we have involuntary mental hospitalization, psychiatry is a prison work. It's a crime against humanity. It is not medicine.
毎日1分ごとに誰かが精神病院に強制入院させられています。こんなことは自分や自分の知り合いには起こらないと思うなら考えてみてください。合衆国では75秒ごとに誰かが強制入院させられているのです。1975年以降、アメリカの病院に割り当てられた予算は何千億$にもなります。精神科医は曖昧な法の解釈を隠れ蓑にして 儲かるビジネスを築き上げました。しかしあまりに多くの精神科医が誰の目にも明らかな不正を犯しているのです。
The FBI has raided the headquarters of one of the nation's largest operators of psychiatric hospitals.
Hundreds complained of overbilling, misdiagnosed conditions, and insurance fraud.
Investigators say they found more than 5,000 similar cases in all 50 states.
Psychiatrists clearly are getting rich.
Psychiatrists traded drugs for sex, filed false insurance claims, and exploited patients sexually.
We have uncovered some of the most elaborate, aggressive, creative, deceptive, immoral, and illegal schemes being used to fill empty hospital beds with insured and paying patients.
精神科医は患者を何よりも大切に扱うという倫理的な規範を守る誓いを行います。しかしあらゆる医療分野の中で詐欺や虐待による犯罪が最も多いのが精神医療です。
Psychiatry is almost a license to print money. If a doctor were clever enough, and many of them are, there's no reason that they couldn't make at least $500,000 a year fraudulently and get away with it in psychiatry.
I don't purport to have deposed every psychiatrist in Las Vegas. I can tell you for a fact I haven't. Maybe I've deposed half. And by and large, they were a dishonest, deceitful, lying bunch of people.
彼らの詐欺的な請求の手口があまりに横行しているため、保険調査員はそれをカリフォルニア流の挨拶とか$100の握手と呼んでいます。
$100 handshake is when usually a patient is institutionalized. Psychiatrist, psychologist will visit that person, shake hands with them, say, hello, I'm Dr. So-and-so, I'm taking care of your problem here, and then leaves.
They might have 10 or 20 patients there. They bill an hour for each one, and they might be in the hospital for a total of 30 minutes. So 20 patients, 20 hours, and they'd send the bills off to Medicaid.
We see that most of the victims of recovered memory therapy were women who had excellent health insurance, whether it was government insurance or private insurance, because many insurance policies wouldn't pay for this kind of long-term nonsense. So those people were targeted because of the nature of the insurance that they had.
アメリカの精神医療産業はあらゆる手段を用いて政府や民間の保険から年間$400億を取得しています。
There were some advertisements, very seductive advertisements for people wanting to lose weight and were having problems losing weight. And they would be given, all expenses paid to go to a particular spa. But when they got to this spa and went in and signed in, it wasn't a spa, it was a psychiatric center. And then they couldn't get out.
What instead they received massive doses of mind-altering drugs, and they were kept for a lengthy period of time, and their insurance carrier was billed tremendous amounts of money for something that was unnecessary.
しかし彼らの嘘は法廷にも入り込みました。報酬のために何でも言う証人を買収したのです。
A psychiatric expert who will have one opinion in one scenario and a completely opposite opinion in another scenario based on which law firm or governmental agency is paying for his time.
These psychiatrists, on one hand, will tell the public that suicide can be prevented, but will go into court and tell a jury that suicide cannot be prevented. And then once you show his prior inconsistent statements, you also show that he is paid very well by pharmaceuticals, then the jury says, you know what, we're not so sure about you because you just lied to us.
強欲さや不正直さ、金銭欲に加えて性犯罪です。アメリカの医者の 6% に過ぎない精神科医が医者による性犯罪のほぼ1/3を占めています。
It has happened so often that by the mid-80s, the insurance companies who insure physicians across America started writing sexual claims out of the policies altogether. That's how common it was.
The system was so broken that more than 25,000 complaints had been registered, but nothing acted upon. When a psychiatrist has a patient, a female patient, and abuses them sexually, there's a very high probability they'll get away with it.
I've seen many cases where the mental health professional becomes very disturbed and is using very strange and odd treatments, and that can go on for many years with no one finding out about it because it's not very public. It's quite private. Things happen behind closed doors.
悲劇的なことに彼らの性犯罪はしばしば子供にも及びます。シー・マーカムベリー博士の場合、表向きはその地域の名士として尊敬されていましたが、子供への性的いたずらで逮捕され、その名声は地に落ちました。彼の家からは子供のポルノ写真を積んだバンが押収されました。その後の調べにより、彼はこれまでに7歳から17歳の少年患者を暴行し、写真を撮るなどの性的虐待を加えていたことが分かりました。そればかりか、ベリーは50年にわたって誰にも気づかれることなく子供への性的いたずらを働いていたのです。これは特殊な出来事ではなく、この職業に関わる多くの人に共通の入念に隠された特性です。あらゆる町、あらゆる州、あらゆる国にレイプや性的虐待、殺人や詐欺を犯している精神科医がいます。しかも精神医療に対する信頼性はこの後見ていただくように最大の不正によって成り立っているのです。
I was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder,
ADHD,
mild depression,
Major depression.
manic depressive,
Borderline personality disorder.
compulsive disorder,
anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia, depression,
sleep disorder.
identity problem disorder.
But all of these so-called diseases are just made up. They're just fabricated. They're fictions of psychiatry imagination.
What would psychiatrists do without their labels? They couldn't pretend to be real doctors anymore, you know? Neither could psychologists, you know? Diagnosing, what a godlike thing to do. Making diagnoses, and here's your treatment, a pill.
Because so far they're not proving that any so-called mental illnesses exist. These are labels, and that's all they are.
しかし何の証拠もなしに信憑性を得ることはできません。そのため精神科医はそれを作り上げます。
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease, and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor, say aye.
The American Psychiatric Association is the publisher and owner and wealthy owner of DSM. They've made a great deal of money on DSM.
DSM の初版が刊行されて以来、投票によってこの診断マニュアルに加えられた精神障害の数は374に増加しました。精神障害が一つ増えるたびに不正を行う新たな方法が作られるのです。
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to send in a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things. You know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
The psychiatric industry takes advantage of that. They say, wow, we can get these things categorized, make it look scientific, so let's label everything. Now we have a label for it. We can put a coding. If you've ever seen a medical insurance form, everything has a code.
In DSM, it just looks like sort of some magical numbers. Of course, what we're talking about is reimbursement for mental health treatment as an illness.
The more types of coatings, the more types of illnesses you can come up with, the more claims can be paid, and the more reasons for treatment, and the more reasons for revenue for the psychiatric establishment, for the hospitals, and of course, the pharmaceutical companies.
信じがたいことに DSM を科学的事実として公表していながら、多くの精神科医がそれには科学性が完全に欠落していることを認めています。
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice, I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.
こういった診断は診断を行う精神科医によって大きく異なります。この隠しカメラの映像の中で患者は何人もの精神科医を訪れて同じ症状を訴えています。
I'm extremely unorganized, and I didn't used to be. It's caused problems in the family. It's caused problems getting, I'm self-employed.
You got ADD, ADHD, taking depressed, and your depression is bipolar depressed.
You have a brain chemistry disorder, and it's probably genetic.
You have a lot of the symptoms of depression.
So it seems like it is a mixed picture. What that means is like we got some depressive symptoms and some, high symptoms.
If you're bipolar, I'll need to give you a mood stabilizer. We don't know. I kind of doubt it.
It's considered low-grade bipolar.
You are more of the ADD and ADHD.
And as far as medications for depression, because I would recommend that you start a medication, which are Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa.
Usually Focalin XR is pretty good.
They'll give you some Lexapro in the morning and some trazodone at night.
Lamictal is a better medication for that. It works on your depression also.
But the treatment for any bipolar cycling is the same. The lithium,
Remeron is another one.
Trazodone,
Tegretol,
Depakote, Wellbutrin,
Lexapro,
Lamictal,
Equitroid,
Depakote,
lithium,
Ambien.
You may need an antidepressant also with your Lamictal.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
To a certain degree, it's trial and error.
You never know if it's the right drug.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
I have cured none of my patients.
We're always challenged by our lack of knowledge.
I mean, in fact, we don't know what the causes of mental illness are.
Most mental illnesses, we do not know the cause.
Of course, it would be nice to know exact reasons of disorders, but maybe in the future.
I'm the Director of Research at the American Psychiatric Association. We don't know the etiology of really any of the mental disorders at the present time.
DSM-5 is coming out. It's grown to 10 times its original size, and it labels everybody. I could find 5 diagnoses that would fit you or anybody else.
これを病理学の調査方法と比較してみてください。それはさまざまな正確な検査によって本当の病気を見つける本当の科学です。
We do millions of laboratory tests as well as the structural examination and the microscopic examination. It's a whole series of applied scientific procedures. In the case of psychiatry, there isn't any laboratory tool that can precisely identify a psychiatric disease and allow it to be classified.
It's not as if there's some study of tissue or some study of the body or some study of matter. These are all categories which are made up. They're simply made up. They don't exist in nature. They're decided upon by psychiatrists and voted on.
DSM によって利益を得ているのは精神科医だけではありません。精神障害のどの病名にもつきものなのが精神薬です。
The pharmaceutical corporations now contribute enormous sums of money for the education of psychiatric residents and for the support of research by their professors, so that psychiatry today has become in America, has become very largely learning of which drug to use with which disease or disorder.
This to me is completely unethical, untenable, unacceptable for this to occur. The web of money is all over the place. It has compromised psychiatry, and now it's compromising psychology, and worst of all, it's compromising the patients.
2006年の調査によれば、新しい DSM にどの障害を加えるかを決定する精神科医の 56% が製薬会社と経済的なつながりを持っていたことが明らかになりました。その結果、私たちは今日大量の薬物を目にしています。その全てが DSM による独断的な診断に基づいて作られた障害を治療するためのものです。
The fact that it is couched in the language of science without necessarily having any of the scientific data or underpinnings to justify it is as threatening as anything we've seen today.
合法な医学を真似ることで大衆を納得させる精神医学による最新の最も高価な策略は脳スキャン。
We can scan all the brains we want to. The fact that we see changes in different people's brains, changes in functioning, doesn't mean that we've discovered anything that has its origin in the brain. It just means that we're seeing changes, but it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the brain.
They have no reliable measures about precise blood flow patterns for any of the psychiatric disorders using any of the scans.
It's marketing. This is marketing. This is not science. This is incredibly effective marketing. It has nothing to do with science.
精神科医と心理学者は DSM を使用して世界中で4億5000万人もの人々に精神病のレッテルを貼っています。これはフランス、イタリア、ドイツ、カナダ、オーストラリア、イギリス、ロシアの人口を合計したのと同じ数です。彼らが推し進める精神薬の売り上げは年間800億ドルを超え、政府による精神医学への助成金は世界中で年間2500億ドルに上ります。その大半が疑うことを知らず弱い立場にいる人々に対する診断と薬物の投与から来ているのです。
We have swallowed all manner of poisonous certainties fed us by our parents and school teachers. If the race is to be freed from its crippling burden of good and evil, it must be psychiatrists who take the original responsibility.
ブロック・チショルムの宣言は学校制度に対する精神医学の猛攻撃を象徴するものでした。
They actually said that the purpose was social control, not to pass on knowledge, not to give him something so that he can go into the world of work.
1950年、世界中の精神科医や心理学者が公立学校制度の抜本的な見直しを提案するためにホワイトハウスに集まりました。
The White House Conference on Mental Health in the 1950s was a landmark that served to bolster the idea that schools would serve their communities better as mental health clinics than they would as institutions of learning.
In the early 60s, the world of psychiatry started to really go places in this country. Little by little, it came into our schools, our educational system.
1965年までにそれは法制化されました。精神科医は子どもたちに誰彼構わずレッテルを貼り、薬漬けにすることを公認されたのです。
A child is labeled ADD or ADHD the minute he can't sit still for a 10-15 minute period of time, or he talks constantly or ignores the teacher completely. That will get him and earn him an ADD or ADHD label.
注意欠陥多動性障害、すなわち ADHD というレッテルは1987年に本格化し、1年間で50万人のアメリカの子どもたちが ADHD と診断されました。 1997年までには440万人に急増しました。この精神病の見せかけ上の蔓延に対して広がった一般市民の不安の声を受けて、合衆国政府が助成する国立衛生研究所は親や教育者に ADHD の正確な実態を説明するために著名な医師や精神科医からなる委員会を招集しました。
I would like any member of the panel to describe a typical ADHD in terms of symptomatology. Mark, would you like to? Since you see them in your practice.
I mean, I think the panel has been frank, and the difficulties here are immense in terms of these. I mean, it is hard. It's very hard to know how to answer this question. They cannot, even when. They are as if driven by a motive. There are some good clinical descriptions. And I think, I think part of the problem is the profession keeps changing the diagnosis.
At this time, we do not have a diagnostic test for ADHD. Therefore, the validity of the disorder continues to be a problem.
しかしこの告白によって流れに歯止めがかかることはありませんでした。2年後 ADHD と診断された生徒の数は600万人になりました。現在世界中で2000万人の子どもたちが精神障害というレッテルを貼られています。多くの場合その診断はほんの数分で下されます。
We would sit behind a two-way mirror along with the parents. We would then look at the child. We would do small manipulative activities with them to see where their deficit was. It was wrong what we were doing. We were looking at a 5-minute glimpse of this child's life and saying, okay, here you go. Here's a little pill, take it, you'll be fine.
これらの小さな薬、リタリンやアデロール、コンサルタなどは合衆国麻薬取締局により強い中毒性のある薬物としてコカインやアヘン、覚醒剤と同じ分類にされています。
When I was on the Ritalin, it made me just feel like totally different, like I wasn't even who I was.
I was, flipping out, was twitching, going crazy.
I felt like I was out of it all the time, like I wasn't there, I wasn't human.
You're just a zombie, pretty much. You do what you can just to get by and just don't do anything extra.
My mother never teased me, but she thought I really had ADHD and I was wrong, and I had something wrong with me. So I thought she'd feel bad and feel sorry for me if I died, but then again, I thought that she would miss me a lot, and I also love her a little more than I wanted to kill myself. And so I stopped when I realized that.
ふんだんに処方される薬は子どもたちの新たな収入源になりました。薬をクラスメートに売るのです。
It's called kitty cocaine. They take the Ritalin and they just repackage it and they sell it on campus to the kids because it's like speed.
I figured if I was gonna do drugs, I might as well make it worth it. And I ended up doing street drugs, and then I ended up getting into it really bad.
We're looking at marijuana and other things as being gateway drugs, and actually the so-called medications are a greater gateway drug.
The Ritalin drugs are backfiring big time because if the child is already disruptive and he takes cocaine, he's going to be a lot more disruptive after he's taken it. It is not going to calm him down.
Boom, she got on the drugs and her personality changed, her behaviors changed, they became erratic and dark and violent, and it was just a nightmare.
He kept having adverse reactions, becoming very, very angry. He could not control his behavior, he couldn't control his temper.
He was on 5 different psych meds, Prozac and lithium, and he was 7 years old. And he was unable to function. He would have rages and then crying and all kinds of just violent rages, grabbing knives and all of this.
The list includes 15-year-old Kip Kinkle withdrawing from Prozac when he shot 22 classmates, killing 2 after murdering his mother and stepfather at his home in Springfield, Oregon. 18-year-old Jason Hoffman on Effexor and Celexa when he opened fire at his California high school, wounding 5. 15-year-old Sean Cooper on a mix of antidepressants when he shot students in Idaho. And 17-year-old Eric Harris on Luvox when he and partner Dylan Klebold killed 12 classmates and a teacher in the bloodiest school massacre yet, Columbine.
こうした全てが子どもたちが学校に来るそもそもの理由、すなわち教育を受けることに悪影響を及ぼしています。1970年以降、合衆国の教育レベルは世界で9位から26位にまで落ちました。同時期にアメリカの学校で学習、行動、精神障害といったレッテルを貼られた子どもの数は急上昇し、ADHD の薬の売り上げは118倍に増加しました。
Children don't ask for psychiatric drugs. Children don't ask to be diagnosed. They don't want to be called crazy. So you ask the classic Roman question, legal question, cui bono, who benefits? The people who make the diagnosis.
Psychiatry should actually go into government, that politicians should listen to psychiatrists. Psychiatrists should be in every parliament and should direct and monitor political activities.
精神医学がここ1世紀ほどの間に世界規模で社会に浸透してきたことは偶然ではありません。
People aren't aware that in 1940, a prominent British psychiatrist, Colonel J.R. Rees, addressed the National Council on Mental Hygiene and set the agenda for psychiatry for the next 60 years. Since then, psychiatrists have been given authority in nearly every sector of our society, with tragic results.
We must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. Public life, politics, and industry should all of them be within our sphere of influence. We have made a useful attack upon a number of professions. The two easiest of them, naturally, are the teaching profession and the church. The most difficult are law and medicine.
その後、リーズの仲間で世界精神保健連盟の共同創設者である精神科医 G. ブロック・チョショルムが精神医学の計画を拡張しました。
To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas.
その基本計画を実行するためにアメリカの精神科医たちは精神病は国家的危機であり政府資金の大幅な増加によってのみ解決できると議会に信じ込ませました。こうして精神医学に対する巨額の政府資金の投入が始まり1946年に100万ドルだったものが今日では14億ドルにまで上昇しました。約1400倍の増加です。精神医学の影響はアメリカだけではなく世界中に広まっています。世界中で相次ぐ重大事件の背後には精神医学の痕跡があります。例えばセルビア人の精神科医ヨハン・ラスコビッチです。クロアチア人やイスラム教徒は人種的に劣るという固定観念に基づいて民族浄化を要求しました。その結果1990年代のボスニアでラスコビッチの同僚の精神科医ラドバン・カラドジッチとスロボダン・ミロシェビッチ大統領はバルカン強制収容所を設立し罪のない人々への大規模な拷問、レイプ、殺人を実行しました。軍のある精神科医はこう述べています。
C'est très difficile tuer millions de personnes. C'est très difficile, techniquement difficile. Les Allemands étaient bons techniciens et ils ne pouvaient pas, ils pouvaient seulement 6 millions de Juifs exterminés. Ils massacrent, par exemple, 100 ou 200 de personnes. Ou viole sans femme et sans jeune fille, pour que les autres sont effrayés et échappent. Alors vous avez le terrain pur.
100年前のパブロフの条件付けと現代のマインドコントロールの技術を組み合わせ、精神科医や心理学者は普通の人や子供でさえも大量殺人犯へと変えてしまうことができるのです。
You could train them to use firearms indiscriminately. You could train them to shoot people with very little feeling or thought. You could train them to use abusive and brutalizing procedures in order to obtain information with no hesitancy, with no concern.
このようにしてテロリストが作られます。オサマ・ビンラディンは同時多発テロ事件の黒幕とみなされていましたが、アルカイダの頭脳として指揮を執っていたのはアイマン・アル・ザワヒリでした。カイロ大学で心理学と薬理学を学び、精神医学の手法に基づいてアルカイダの訓練マニュアルを執筆しました。マドリードの爆弾テロを指揮したアブ・ハフィザは同じマインドコントロールの技術を用いたアルカイダの工作員です。
You can implant memories. Memories are potent sources of motivated behavior. If you implant enough memories of specific kinds, you can shape and change the nature of human thinking and feelings.
And it was thought to be a kind of ultimate weapon because what greater weapon could there be than control of the human mind?
You can control minds and you can move people around, particularly when you control their lives. It's easier to control their minds.
When we look at psychiatry and psychology, social control is the primary agenda.
現在、その指針は世界中に定着しています。精神保健の精神検査キャンペーンが青少年検査というもっともらしい名称のもとに行われています。
The national government is actually encouraging it and wanting to test every single kid in our public school system.
All children are put under this kind of a test for psychiatric evaluation, a 10-minute test that tells them absolutely nothing.
I predict that upwards of 90% of all the people screened will be diagnosed as having a psychiatric disorder, which means that we'll have an entire generation that will be a perfect profit center.
この青少年精神検査プログラムの推進者は精神科医デビッド・シェファー、合衆国国防総省の顧問です。
They're not just screening children to have complete control of the 52 million children in school. They're screening now, and that bill, they will screen their parents, and they will screen all adults in America.
The idea of mass screening for mental illness in the American population, run by a government initiative, is one of the scariest ideas I ever heard of.
Psychiatry is politics, has always been politics. It is politics pure and simple because psychiatry was always the application of force against people who don't want to be forced.
It's a sad thing, and parents better wake up. Society better wake up because we're in serious trouble if they don't.
社会のあらゆる分野に浸透するという精神医学の基本計画は現実になってきています。精神病が蔓延しているのではなく、精神医学が蔓延しているのです。打つ手はあります。それを行わなければなりません。1969年、サイエントロジー協会によって設立された市民の人権擁護の会は、精神医学の人権に対する侵害の調査と暴露を行っています。カリフォルニア州ロサンゼルスの国際本部から CCHR は精神医学の侵害的そして破壊的行為を文書によって証明し、それを15の言語で利用できるよう出版しています。1200万以上のコピーが世界を渡って、医療専門家や政府高官、教育者、 ビジネスリーダーへと配布されました。その本部では世界で知られている展示、精神医学、死を生み出している産業が展示されています。この最先端を行く展示は精神医学の歴史を14のドキュメンタリーフィルムによって公表しています。精神病患者たちが檻に閉じ込められた起源からでっち上げられた精神障害を治療するための現在の社会への膨大な薬物投与までです。その地方展示会は5つの大陸にわたって何百もの都市を回っています。それによって何十万もの人々が精神科医の背後にあるこの暗い真実を知ることができます。今日世界を渡る人権運動の始まりは30年以上前、この一人の人間の自由を勝ち取るために始まったのです。ビクター・ギョリーはペンシルベニアの精神病院に強制入院させられたのです。
He was interviewed by a psychiatrist who said, I can't understand a word this man is saying. He's incoherent. Obviously a paranoid schizophrenic. Commit him, which they did. Now, he wasn't babbling incoherently, he was speaking Hungarian. We filed a lawsuit against the hospital. In the middle of the case, the doctor who was the head of the hospital stands up and he says, We want nothing more to do with Victor Giori.
ビクター・ギョリーの解放は世界中で CCHR によって助けられた何千もの事例の最初のものでした。
CCHR challenged involuntary commitment laws throughout the United States and internationally, and what we found was that people were being incarcerated without any legal rights.
They had no right to an attorney. They could be drugged, shocked, lobotomized without their consent.
オーストラリアの事例です。1977年 CCHR は親民療法と呼ばれる精神医学の実践を暴きました。
Patients were being knocked unconscious with a cocktail of barbiturates and other psychiatric drugs, and they were being subjected to electroshock treatment daily, sometimes twice daily, without their knowledge. Deep sleep treatment had led to 48 deaths.
CCHR はそれを調査し、暴露して10年以上戦い、最終的に親民療法が禁止されることになりました。南アフリカでは精神患者が隔離され、残忍な扱いを受け強制労働させられていた精神医療キャンプが CCHR によって暴露されたのです。イタリアでは CCHR はメディアと法制機関とともにあらゆる精神病院に強制調査をしました。そこは残酷なありさまでした。そして CCHR はこれらを廃業させたのです。日本では CCHR は政府や納税者からお金を騙し取っていた精神科医と精神病院の財務犯罪を暴露しました。犯罪者は訴訟を起こされ、その精神病院は廃業に追い込まれたのです。合衆国では国内最大規模の市営精神医療設備会社での10億ドルの詐欺を CCHR が暴露しました。600人の連邦情報官が20の州にわたって強制調査を行いました。その結果、何十もの告発が起こり、何百万ドルもの賠償金を払うことになり、そしてこの病院の全てが潰され永久に閉ざされたのです。現在目にする精神薬に関する警告の多くに CCHR が関わっています。
CCHR has documented the side effects of these drugs, has taken evidence to the FDA, has gone to Congress, has obtained congressional hearings.
It took 13 years before the FDA finally admitted that those drugs can cause suicide and issued black box warnings. We got 9 state laws passed. Following that, it was the introduction of the Child Medication Safety Act in 2004.
CCHR とその他の組織の努力により過去3年間に精神薬の危険性を暴く薬物規制機関による警告が60件以上ありました。
People do have problems in life. Sometimes they can be very serious. But the last thing you want to do is hurt them, and that's what psychiatric treatment does. There are alternatives. There are treatments and methods that will actually help people without the violence of drugs and electroshock. And they're economical as well. And that is a threat to a vested interest that is making billions of dollars from psychiatric drugs every year.
History has shown that virtually every workable treatment, every one that has been available for the seriously mentally disturbed, people who actually need help, has been suppressed or shut down by the vested interests of psychiatry and the pharmaceutical industry.
The public's largely been getting their information from the industry that benefits on putting them on psychiatric drugs. It's an advertising campaign. It's not science, it's marketing.
CCHR is causing things to change by being champions for a growing number of well-intentioned people who are risking their professional careers to speak up against the abuses of psychiatry.
Having that support from a group like this has made a tremendous difference in what I feel personally that I've been able to accomplish.
I think of CCHR as fellow soldiers.
I'm unaware of any other organization that does the kind of work that CCHR does, particularly on the scope and the level that they do.
CCHR has been very effective at moving the ball down the field. One at a time, one state at a time, one legislator at a time.
CCHR has had the resources to be able to teach and have legislators become more aware of what the problem with the psychotropic drugs are.
CCHR has researched the issue. When you need the facts, you go to CCHR.
現在 CCHR は世界の何十もの国で250以上の支部があります。どこであれ、いつであれ、精神科医が人権を侵害すると CCHR は人々にそのメッセージを訴えに行きます。アメリカから日本、カナダからイギリスへとCCHR の重要人物が行進をリードし、すべての人のために精神科医による侵害からの自由と保護を実現させています。
It's essential that CCHR does their job and gets the support to do their job, because the extent to which they do, the whole vehicle that's out of control about psychiatry gets to be contained and gets to be eliminated. It scares me to think if this doesn't happen. I've seen up close what it's like. It scares the daylights out of me.
You have 100,000 people electroshocked every year. You have 17 million children worldwide taking mind-altering drugs. You have people being involuntarily committed every 75 seconds, and it's all under the guise of mental health.
The only way that you're going to get humane treatment into the mental health system is to take psychiatry and the vested interests out of the picture. And only then will you see people truly obtaining mental health.
You have two choices. Either you pretend you knew nothing about it, or you do something about it. With knowledge comes responsibility. That's why we're here. That's why people are joining forces with CCHR.
あらゆる階層からあらゆる宗教から何千もの人たちがすでに加わっています。CCHR は精神医学の人権に対する侵害の調査と暴露を行っています。そして精神科医の強制的悪用された活動が終わり、人権と尊厳がすべての人に戻るまでそうし続けます。あなたの助けが必要です。この戦いに加わりましょう。